The beginning at the dormitory, Emily. Carter took a deep breath as she stepped out of her dad's old SUV, her favorite duffel bag slung over one shoulder. The late August sun beat down on the bustling campus, shimmering off car hoods and sparkling in the windows of Monroe Hall, a brick-walled freshman dorm that looked far more imposing in person than any online tour could convey. For Emily, a sophomore transferring this semester, the campus was only half familiar. She knew the main quad and library from orientation, but the dorm and its social web were all new territory. Dragging her suitcase into the cool, echoey lobby, Emily's nerves jangled with a cocktail of excitement and anxiety. Around her, the air hummed with clusters of students hauling boxes, meeting new roommates, and parents doling out last-minute reminders. She watched a blonde girl, Jessica, direct her small army of helpers with charismatic efficiency, all laughter and light sarcasm. Another girl with auburn curls,
Emily,
Chloe,
over here.
joked with the front desk clerk, while Anna and Rachel flitted around, exchanging first impressions with other students. They seemed like the kind of group who set the social rhythm of the floor. Emily's assigned room was on the third floor, a corner double she'd somehow gotten to herself for now. The space was small, but overflowing with potential. White walls full of promise. A tiny window framing the campus green. Twin beds squeezed close together. She methodically unpacked, setting up her desk with textbooks, placing her favorite succulents on the windowsill, and pinning family photos beside her mirror. Down the hall, the laughter grew louder. Emily, eager not to seem standoffish, followed the cheerful noise to the common lounge. There, Jessica and her friends had effortlessly taken center stage, making introductions, organizing an impromptu get-to-know-you icebreaker, and cracking inside jokes that hinted at a past summer of shared experiences. When Jessica spotted Emily, she beckoned with a welcoming grin. "Emily, right? Come on over. We need another hand for the snack table. Unless you're fiercely loyal to store-bought cookies." The ice broke quickly. Emily found herself sharing stories of her small-town upbringing in Vermont, comparing quirky family traditions, and laughing at Rachel's impressions of the over-enthusiastic orientation leaders. Within the first hour, Emily had learned the group's dynamic. Jessica was the natural leader, confident, assertive, quick-witted. Chloe, warm and observant. Anna, artsy and thoughtful. Rachel, a jokester with a heart of gold. They invited Emily to join their plans for the Welcome Week activities, promising to show her around campus and share their list of must-try coffee spots. As dusk settled and fairy lights flickered on throughout the lounge, Emily felt an unexpected sense of belonging. It was easy to be swept up in their enthusiasm, debating which professor was the toughest, ranking dorm food disasters, swapping horror stories about move-in day. For the first time all summer, Emily felt relief replacing her nerves. Monroe Hall could be home, she thought, if this group was part of it. But as the evening wound down, Emily sensed, more than saw, subtle undercurrents. Jessica's laugh occasionally faltered when Anna praised Emily's sense of humor, and Chloe's sideways glances at Jessica didn't go unnoticed. Still, for now, everything felt hopeful and new. Emily's fresh start was off to a promising beginning. Her future was, for the moment, unwritten. The spark of jealousy. The days that followed move-in passed in a blur of introductory lectures, campus tours, and welcome week activities. For Emily, each morning brought new faces and fresh attempts to memorize them. The barista in the student union, who remembered everyone's name. The philosophy major, quoting Nietzsche at breakfast. And the upperclassmen, who manned sign-up booths with relentless cheer. Emily, still new yet eager, embraced every invitation. Whether it was an impromptu volleyball game on Monroe Lawn or a late-night pizza run, she showed up with an open mind, finding herself slowly woven into the fabric of the dorm's social life. At first, this felt like effortless inclusion, until Emily started noticing small inconsistencies. Glances that didn't last quite long enough. Jokes that seemed to have an edge sharper than necessary. Jessica, as always, was at the center of everything. Her natural charisma drew people in. She was the one others rallied around. The name whispered in the hall when someone needed advice. The one who set the tone for every group outing. Yet, as Emily's presence became more pronounced, subtle shifts started to take shape. What began as camaraderie now felt tinged with something less certain. One evening at a noisy game night in the lounge, Michael, a sophomore known for his sarcastic banter and, more importantly to some people, as Jessica's ex-boyfriend, joined the group. Michael was friendly to everyone, but that night, he seemed especially attentive to Emily. He laughed at her jokes, introduced her to friends from his floor, and asked for her thoughts on everything from horror movies to Vermont winters. As Emily recounted her favorite Halloween tradition, Jessica watched with a tight-lipped smile, fingers drumming lightly against the arm of the sofa. Her friends noticed, too. Chloe shot her a concerned look. Rachel's laughter faltered. Her usual warmth momentarily dimmed. Jessica's mood that night was hard to read. Outwardly, she maintained her role as gracious host, but Emily picked up on the way her compliments started to feel performative. How her "that's so funny" landed just a beat too late. The way her jokes increasingly revolved around inside references Emily couldn't understand. When Michael suggested everyone head out for ice cream, Jessica was the last to stand, offering a breezy, "Emily, you coming?" That sounded more like a challenge than an invitation. In the days that followed, small slights accumulated, almost imperceptible, but undeniably real. Group chats were suddenly filled with inside jokes from before Emily's time. Somebody forgot to tag Emily in the invitation for a coffee run. When Emily caught up at the cafe, she felt the shift in the group's energy. A slight lull in conversation, a glance exchanged between Jessica and Chloe. The turning point came during a study session in the dorm's communal workspace. Michael, ever observant, noticed Jessica's clipped tone with Emily and tried smoothing it over by joking about their competitive streaks. Jessica shot him a sharp look, and Anna, usually quiet and diplomatic, quickly changed the subject. Rumors soon made their discreet rounds. Emily, who always tried to be on time, who admired rather than competed with Jessica, caught wind of whispers regarding her supposed ambition or interest in stealing attention. The words cut deeper than she let on. The tension was punctuated by moments of awkward silence, fleeting but loaded. Each time Emily tried to brush them off, she found herself replaying little interactions in her mind. Was she being paranoid? Was it all in her head? Or was there more brewing beneath Jessica's poised exterior? By the end of the week, what had started as a warm welcome felt increasingly precarious. The dorm that once brimmed with potential now pulsed with a quiet, simmering rivalry. Emily sensed an invisible line had been drawn, and although only the smallest cracks were showing, she could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. And somewhere, in that uncertain space, something unspoken had begun to fester in Jessica's heart.
That's what I
A
thought.
spark of jealousy, subtle yet dangerous, threatening to ignite everything around it. The scheme begins. If the first week at Monroe Hall had been tense, the following days turned colder still. Emily couldn't quite pinpoint when daily awkwardness hardened into something more organized. The jokes with hidden barbs, the cold smiles, the sense of being evaluated, these became part of her landscape, like the persistent hum of the fluorescent light in her room, easy to ignore until it suddenly seemed deafening. Jessica's resentment, once tucked behind perfect manners and leadership charm, sharpened beneath the surface. She spent long evenings huddled in whispers with Chloe and Anna, fingers flying over her phone, pausing only when Emily drew near. The group's laughter, once freely shared, shifted into secrets, snatches of conversation that stopped mid-sentence the moment Emily walked into the lounge or kitchen. Even Rachel, usually the most open-hearted of the bunch, had grown quiet and withdrawn, often glancing nervously between Jessica and Emily, like someone caught in an unwanted crossfire. It started small. Someone anonymously posted a meme in the dorm's group chat, a dig at tryhards, and people from tiny towns. Emily tried to laugh it off, but the context was too pointed. Her own Vermont stories still fresh in everyone's minds. Then the practical jokes began. Sticky notes with cryptic messages appeared on her door. Don't take yourself so seriously. Her laundry was accidentally taken from the dryers and left in a heap in the hallway, and once the group convinced her the RA needed to see her for something urgent that turned out to be nothing but a prank. But the most hurtful attacks happened online. Emily discovered one morning that someone had made a fake social media account in her name, subtly misusing her photos, twisting her captions to sound arrogant, following people she barely knew. Rumors began circulating that Emily was rude to dorm staff, that she was scheming to steal someone's boyfriend, that she only pretended to like Monroe Hall for attention. Her notifications filled with confusing friend requests and suspicious messages. Whenever she asked her friends about it, Chloe always acted surprised. How weird. Must be a glitch. While Jessica feigned concern, but offered no help. Anna, meanwhile, became distant and cagey, clearly uncomfortable with the group's new direction, but too reluctant to stand up to Jessica. Emily caught her once in the hallway, alone, and tried to ask if everything was okay. Anna met her eyes, just for a moment, then dropped her gaze and muttered something about being late for a study group. Outside their circle, some students just avoided Emily altogether. Others seemed to look at her through a lens of suspicion, as if searching for some hidden flaw. She overheard whispered giggles when she entered the dining hall, and once stumbled on a text thread open on a shared lounge computer. A string of messages lampooning her clothes, her accent, even the way she decorated her side of the dorm room. The relentless nature of it all made Emily question her own sanity. Was she imagining things? Was she being too sensitive? But every time she tried to brush it aside, a new coincidence surfaced. A missed invitation to a study session, her name missing from the list of volunteers for campus events. An offhand comment about not fitting in. One Friday night, Emily returned to find her phone overflowing with screenshots. A few older floormates had sent her direct messages. Hey, saw something weird. Thought you should know. The fake account had posted a private group chat screenshot, doctored to look like Emily was insulting Jessica and her friends. It was a fabrication, but too plausible for people who barely knew her. She felt the world close in, her words twisted, her reputation weaponized. The weekend was a blur. Emily lay awake, piecing together the chain of events. She realized at last that what was happening wasn't just personal animosity. This was something more organized, a campaign, a scheme.
Emily, I'm so sorry.
The people she'd considered friends
know I messed
had
up,
made her
and
the
I really
target
regret it.
of a deliberate, calculated
I've been
effort
doing a
to
lot of
drive her out.
thinking, and
No matter where she
I really
turned,
wanna try to
the
make things
walls of
different this
Monroe
time.
Hall
That's a great
seemed
step.
to echo with silent blame and suspicion. For now, Emily kept her head down, trying to figure out how it had all gone so wrong,
My
and if there
silence
was
pure
anything she could do
cowardice.
to make it right. But even as she felt the weight of isolation
I
settle
turned into the
heavier
kind of
on
friend
her
I used to be
shoulders,
afraid of.
a small, resilient ember of defiance began to glow within her. She didn't know it yet, but being pushed to the edge would teach her more about herself and about the
We're suspending
darkness
your access
that
to
can
all
lurk
facilities,
behind the
effective
friendliest
immediately.
smiles than anything else at Monroe Hall. The locked room Emily woke to a world that felt sharper and grayer than the one she remembered. Sunlight streamed through her window, promising a new day, but she hesitated, listening to the hush that had settled around her life like a heavy blanket. The friendly chatter she'd once heard each morning from the hallway had faded, replaced by the occasional muffled laughter, laughter that stopped whenever she opened her door. It was late September now, but Emily's sense of time had fractured. She marked the days not by classes or events, but by fresh indignities. Laundry that disappeared, whispered gossips in the restroom, a text chain she wasn't included on. She forced herself through routines with the mechanical precision of someone surviving, not living. Keep your head down, she thought. Maybe it'll blow over. But the storm hadn't passed. It was about to get worse. The setup began innocently enough. Late one Thursday, Jessica sent a message in the Monroe Hall group chat. Girls' movie night, room 314. Bring snacks or something comfy to share. Emily hesitated, then typed, I'll bring popcorn. Trying to sound upbeat, everyone responded with emojis and excited gifs. For a moment, she let herself imagine things might return to normal. Maybe this was a chance to prove she belonged. That evening, Emily prepared meticulously. She popped 2 bags of popcorn in the communal kitchen, grabbed her softest flannel blanket, and dressed in the pink hoodie her mom had sent last week. As she made her way down the hall, she passed Chloe and Anna, heads together, laughter abruptly dying as Emily approached. Hey, see you there? She called. Yeah, of course, Chloe replied, forced brightness in her tone. Room 314, Anna and Rachel's room, was cozy, with string lights draped across the ceiling and a big laptop perched at the end of Anna's bed. Jessica lounged in the middle, scrolling through Netflix. Chloe sat cross-legged on the floor, Rachel rearranged pillows, and Anna stood fiddling with the window. Emily! Rachel waved, smiling broadly. Come sit. We just started picking a movie. Emily set down the popcorn, careful where she stepped. Someone handed her a can of soda. They all sat in a loose circle. And for about 15 minutes, things felt almost normal. A flurry of movie trailers, arguments about genres, laughter over Chloe's terrible impression of a British detective. Emily couldn't shake her sense of unease, but she clung to the ritual. Movies had a way of building bridges, of giving people something harmless to talk about. Halfway through the first movie, Jessica jumped up. Gotta use the bathroom. Be right back. Anyone else need to go? No one else moved, but Anna said she'd step out to grab more snacks. The group splintered. Rachel scrolled through her phone. Chloe turned the volume down. Emily offered, I'll help with snacks. But Anna shook her head. Don't worry, I got it. The door swung shut. Seconds passed, maybe a minute. Emily shifted uncomfortably. She noticed Chloe eyeing the door. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out from the hall, followed by running footsteps. Rachel immediately leapt up, looking anxious. What was that? She asked, and bolted out, Chloe on her heels. Stay here in case they come back, Rachel called over her shoulder. The door closed behind them. Now Emily was alone. In the sudden silence, her heart pounded. She stood, indecisive, then reached for her phone. But a notification, a direct message from Jessica, popped up. Emily hesitated, then walked to the door and turned the lock. The handle stuck slightly, and she had to jiggle it. She peered through the peephole. Nobody, just the empty, dimly lit hallway. Time ticked by, each minute stretching. She sat back on the bed, waiting for her friend's return. A text from Anna appeared. Everything okay in there? Emily replied. Yeah, I locked up. You guys okay? No answer. At first, she scrolled TikTok mindlessly. But her phone buzzed again, a group notification. Is everyone all right? Someone said they heard yelling in 314. It was the resident assistant, Kim. Emily frowned. Before she could reply, someone rattled the door handle from outside. Hello? Called Kim. Emily, are you in there? Emily rushed to the door and tried to unlock it, but the handle stuck again. Hold on, she called, twisting it again, embarrassed by the struggle. Finally, it swung open. Kim stood outside, arms crossed, flanked by several floor mates and, shockingly, Jessica, Chloe, Anna, and Rachel. We've had a complaint, Kim said, her voice cool but neutral. Apparently, someone was locked in here. Things were thrown around. People heard shouting. Emily, can you explain? Emily's eyes widened. The room looked different. The blanket she'd brought was tossed on the floor. Someone's lipstick was smeared on Anna's mirror. And a notebook Emily was sure she hadn't touched now lay open on Jessica's bed. Pages dog-eared, with private doodles spiraling over the cover. Candy wrappers littered the desk. A soda can had upended itself, pooling sticky liquid onto Rachel's favorite rug. She hadn't seen or heard any of it happen. I'm not sure what happened, Emily said, her voice wavering. I was waiting for everyone. I locked the door after Jessica told me to. There was a message. She picked up her phone, but the group chat was flooded with confused texts and GIFs. It was impossible to find Jessica's exact message. Or maybe it had been deleted. Chloe gave her a sharp look. We came back and the door was locked. We couldn't get in, Rachel chimed in. All our stuff was rummaged through. Anna's notes are missing. Did you touch them, Emily? Emily's face burned. Head spinning, she tried to stammer out a reply. But the room filled with muttering, whispers about her, about how she must have stayed behind to snoop, about how she'd acted strange all week. Kim gestured for everyone to calm down. I'll need to talk to each of you, separately, she said. Tension charged the air. Even as the group broke up and Kim took notes, Emily saw the glances and felt the judgment. It didn't matter that she was innocent. All the evidence painted her as the troublemaker, the outsider. One by one, her supposed friends avoided her gaze, hiding behind false concern or silent accusation. After Kim left, Emily sat alone in the trashed room, staring at her trembling hands. The group didn't invite her back to movie nights. Whenever she wandered into the lounge, conversation faltered. Even amid crowds, she felt unmistakably, unbearably alone. The aftermath was swift. Gossip exploded overnight. Exaggerated stories of Emily's meltdown in 314, of her snooping through Anna's diaries, of her jealousy and need for attention. Old friends stopped answering her texts. New acquaintances became distant. Her world, already shrinking, collapsed into a single, suffocating point. That night, in the privacy of her own locked room, Emily replayed every moment, searching for where it all went wrong. She pressed her palms to her eyes until colored sparks danced behind her eyelids. It was clear now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a carefully staged scene, a trap tailored so well it was almost invisible, except to the one suffering inside it. But beneath the ache, something else stirred as well, a resolve not to let their lies define her. For the first time, she realized just how dangerous friendship could be when twisted into something cruel. The locked door of room 314 would not be the end of her story. It was, painfully, the beginning of something new. Collapse in despair the week after the room 314 incident dragged like a never-ending storm. Barely anyone spoke to Emily in the halls, not even the RA, whose careful neutrality now felt like condemnation. Every corner of Monroe Hall, once a blur of welcoming faces, had sharpened into something hostile, some hallway to be avoided. Emily felt the slow suffocation of isolation inching up around her, day by day, hour by hour. For the first time since starting college, she doubted everything: her instincts, her memories, her own worth. It began with whispers. She'd walk into the communal kitchen, and they'd fall silent, eyes glued to phones, smirks exchanged over coffee. Group messages, once a deluge, now passed her by, invitations edited so she'd feel like an afterthought, if anyone bothered to mention her at all. At first, Emily responded with a shaky optimism, telling herself it would blow over. She kept showing up, at the lunch table, at club meetings, at group study sessions in the lounge. But wherever she went, the icy air of Monroe Hall followed. People found excuses to leave her out. Let someone else sit closer to the conversation. Or, sometimes, just ignored her completely. The collapse of her academic life was almost as quick. Sleep deserted her. Her nights were spent replaying the events in room 314, silently begging for a do-over or an explanation that would make it all make sense. Assignments piled up. She'd open her laptop and stare at blank screens, mind racing with hypothetical arguments. If only I'd left that room. If only I could prove I wasn't the one who trashed it. Twice, she fell asleep in the library, head pillowed on an open textbook, waking up with drool on the pages and a jolt of panic, afraid she'd missed something important. When grades for midterms started rolling in, her hands shook as she clicked open the portal. 1B, 2 dismal C's, a string of late marks. The shame stung. Emily, who had always prided herself on her work ethic, saw her confidence unraveling one unattended deadline at a time. Meanwhile, her family, cheerful, trusting, far away in Vermont, remained blissfully unaware. "How's the dorm?" her mom would ask on FaceTime, her smile warm and hopeful. "Are you making friends?" Sometimes Emily would almost answer honestly, but the words died in her throat. It all sounded so trivial and childish when spoken aloud. They shut me out. They lied about me. I don't know who I am here anymore. So she pasted on a smile, lied through her teeth. "Just busy." everyone's super nice, then hung up and stared at the ceiling until the panic drained away, leaving only numb exhaustion in its place. Campus became a gauntlet. In the dining hall, Anna and Chloe would pretend not to see her, faces buried in trays or giggling with new friends. Sometimes, Rachel glanced her way with a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but she never crossed the invisible line back to kindness. In seminars, Jessica would answer questions with a breezy confidence that made Emily shrink smaller in her seat. Friends from freshman year started canceling lunch or finding reasons to disappear soon after Emily arrived. She'd read the room and, after a while, stopped trying. Better to be invisible entirely. Worse than the rejection was the suspicion. The rumors, festering, multiplying, took on lives of their own. Emily heard them in snippets. What hurt most wasn't the malice. It was the casual dismissal. The ease with which people she trusted let her disappear. Even professors, noticing her absences and late work, pulled her aside with gentle concern that only made her want to scream or cry. "Is everything all right, Emily?" "Just a rough patch," she'd mutter, desperate to pass as normal. "It'll get better." Despair pressed in from all sides. She started skipping meals instead of risking the awkward silence at a crowded table. Some days, she'd leave her dorm only for classes, then retreat with granola bars and bottled water to her room, drawing the curtains tight. Her space, once carefully curated with succulents, family photos, and string lights, now felt like a cell. The air was stale, heavy with proof that the world outside didn't want her. Dark thoughts caught her off guard at odd hours. Sleep became a battleground. Some nights, she'd hug her pillow and silently hope to wake up back in Vermont, the smell of maple and coffee in the kitchen. Her mom yelling up the stairs to hurry for school. Other nights, she'd lie awake, mind circling the same questions. She even considered calling the campus mental health office, but stopped before dialing, worried her story would sound like petty drama. Besides, the one time she found the courage to talk to the RA, Kim simply nodded, told her to hang in there, and left her with a pamphlet. Emily shoved it in the bottom of her desk drawer, never to be read. In rare moments of clarity, Emily recognized the toll isolation was taking. She grew jumpy at unexpected noises, overanalyzing every text and look. Her grades, already poor, slid lower. Once, she snapped at a classmate who only wanted to borrow her notes. Another time, she nearly burst into tears over a lost pen. She saw the warning signs: depression, anxiety, self-doubt, but felt powerless to stop the spiral. Still, beneath the hopelessness, a tiny, tenacious spark refused to die. On her loneliest day, she scrolled back through old messages, reread words of encouragement from her childhood friends. She watched a favorite childhood movie on her laptop and remembered that she'd survived other storms: the move from Vermont, her parents' divorce, even the lonely years in high school. It wasn't hope, exactly, but it was something, some ember of stubbornness that clung to life. She wrote in her journal one night, "They don't get to decide who I am. Not forever." The words didn't change her circumstances, but they gave the darkness a shape she could fight. Still, to the outside world, and most days to herself, Emily was a ghost. Dorm life continued around her, relentless and indifferent, as if she'd merely been a rumor, a story told and forgotten. But battered and invisible as she felt, threads of resistance began to weave themselves through the ruins of her loneliness. She didn't know it yet, But her story wasn't over. Somewhere in the pit of despair, a new resolve was slowly, painfully taking root. The retaliation plan. Despair, for all its weight, has an odd tendency to sharpen the mind when it lingers too long. In the thick silence of her dorm room, Emily sat wrapped in a blanket, her laptop open, a half-eaten granola bar forgotten on the cluttered desk. Her grades were hanging by a thread. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words to anyone in days. In spite of, or because of, her exhaustion and grief, a new clarity cut through her fog. If she wanted justice, she couldn't wait for someone else to save her. The first step was acceptance. The girls who tormented her, Jessica at the center, Chloe, Anna, Rachel, drawn in various degrees by loyalty or fear, weren't going to change their minds, discover a sudden conscience, or come clean. The rumors would not die on their own. Emily needed to confront the situation, not just withstand it. The question was, how could she, powerless and maligned, possibly fight back? She started by observing. If surviving Monroe Hall meant becoming invisible, she would turn that to her advantage. Over the next days, she watched the group closely, quietly, almost methodically, tracking their comings and goings, the hidden glances exchanged in the lounge, the whispered laughter when she passed by, even the moments of tension between Jessica and her followers. Other students, once wary or complicit, had started to slip up. Some expressed discomfort at how far things had gone. Others mentioned old stories of Jessica's jealousy, hinting that Emily wasn't her first target. Armed with her phone, Emily began to document what she could. The group was so confident, so used to wielding social power, that they didn't even try to hide their tracks. She screenshotted every snide comment and ambiguous meme posted in the group chat. She kept voicemails where Jessica or Chloe feigned kindness, their voices laced with barely concealed venom. She even set her phone to record in her pocket whenever she was around them, picking up stray remarks and, once, Rachel laughing as she described planning the perfect setup. She knew the evidence had to be irrefutable. No gaps, no chance for denial or manipulation. She started a digital folder, password protected, bold, and all caps, and cataloged every finding by date, cross-referencing events with her own journal. She backed up everything to the cloud, just in case someone, Jessica perhaps, with her web of connections, got the idea to borrow or wipe her computer. The process was tedious and sometimes painful. Each screenshot or audio clip a fresh reminder of betrayal. But Emily found herself grimly satisfied. At least she wasn't helpless. Still, she knew this wouldn't be enough. Her word, even with evidence, was unlikely to outweigh Monroe Hall's reigning social circle. She needed allies, sympathetic witnesses, preferably those burned by Jessica before, or anyone tired of how the games had intensified. Emily began reaching out with caution. She sent tentative messages to people she'd once chatted with at clubs or in study groups, people who'd faded into the background after the rumors exploded. The responses trickled in, slowly at first. Some ignored her, but others, one former theater kid who'd transferred floors after a falling out with Jessica, a quiet junior who'd once been the butt of an online joke, replied, wary but open. A pattern emerged. Jessica's brand of leadership always included an inner circle and an ever-widening ring of casualties. Students who'd been humiliated or discarded any time their presence threatened her control. One late evening, as campus lights flickered outside, Emily met with Mia the theater girl, in a quiet corner booth at the student union. The meeting was awkward at first. Mia stared into her coffee. Emily fidgeted nervously. But as details spilled out, recognition flashed in Mia's eyes. She described how, during her own ordeal, accidents and sabotage escalated until she'd switched dorms. She'd saved a few screenshots, too, after Jessica's attacks metastasized beyond the dorm and into campus club politics. Emily felt less alone and more determined. Bit by bit, Emily's map of the group's history grew. Armed with evidence, she and Mia quietly compared notes. They uncovered patterns: which freshmen were recruited, which upperclassmen quietly distanced themselves when Jessica's claws came out, which resident assistants habitually looked the other way to avoid drama. Emily realized the problem wasn't only a personal vendetta. It was systemic, a pattern of bullying and cover-ups built on image, fear, and silence. Still, gathering facts was only half the plan. Emily needed timing and a platform. She marked the college calendar with a bold red pen: the Fall Student Assembly, an annual event where awards were granted, grievances could be aired, and the administration promised to listen to every student. It would be loud, public, and, most importantly, nearly impossible for Jessica and her friends to twist quietly in the shadows. In the days leading up, Emily grew careful to avoid tipping her hand. She spoke little, kept her circle tight, deleted traceable messages. She made sure her alliances stayed quiet, meeting would-be supporters off campus or online with private video chats. She sometimes questioned her plan's audacity. Could a handful of voices and a stack of digital evidence break a culture of silence? But she remembered nights spent staring at the ceiling, the anger and dread that had built with every new rumor, and that was answer enough. What surprised her most was the shift inside herself. Weeks of pain had stripped away illusions, leaving something harder and clearer. Her self-doubt hadn't vanished. She still flinched at sudden noises. She still sometimes wanted to curl up and disappear. But determination thickened in her chest. Even when fear pressed in, she watched herself in the mirror and thought. She also noticed subtle changes in those around her. Rachel, once Jessica's enthusiastic follower, had grown quieter, her eyes flitting away from the group's raucous jokes. Chloe seemed tense, her phone clutched tightly at all times, flinching whenever Jessica raised her voice. Anna avoided eye contact entirely, as if burdened by guilt. Emily sensed cracks in their once unshakable alliance, the way even monsters could unravel when light was finally cast on the truth. On the night before the assembly, Emily spread her evidence out: digital files on her laptop, scribbled notes mapped across her notebook, her phone buzzing with last-minute encouragements from Mia and the tiny cluster of allies she'd managed to find. Her hands shook, but it was the tremor of adrenaline, not defeat. She rehearsed her statement: clear facts first, no dramatics. Then voice the truth plainly, without accusation, letting the evidence do the work. She thought about all the girls and guys who had been forced out of the group or belittled behind their backs, and about her own journey from friendly newcomer to pariah to survivor, one stubborn heartbeat at a time. As she drifted off to sleep, sleepier and steadier than she'd felt in weeks, Emily realized the worst had already happened. What was left? Her voice, her resolve, the evidence in her hands, was now hers to wield. For the first time in months, the darkness felt less overwhelming. Tomorrow, she would face them all. And this time, she wouldn't stand alone. The truth is revealed the morning of the fall student assembly broke crisp and golden with the kind of soft sunlight that promised change. Emily stood at her window for a long time, watching the leaves swirl across the quad, reminding herself to breathe. By the time she left her room, her evidence folder was zipped tightly inside her backpack, and her heart thudded with both dread and determination. The campus was more crowded than usual as students filtered into the main auditorium, some drawn by rumors of upcoming awards, others curious after the recent spike in dorm drama. Emily hurried along the edge of the crowd, her nerves alight with anticipation and fear. She could feel eyes on her, some pitying, others skeptical, but she kept her head high, focusing on the auditorium's only open doors and the bright stage beyond. A sense of anticipation hung in the air. Jessica and her group arrived in a sleek, confident cluster. Jessica's hair fell just so, her smile practiced, her posture perfect. Chloe, Anna, and Rachel lingered at her flanks. Rachel with uncertain eyes, Chloe tight-lipped, Anna moving as if invisible. Emily spotted Mia and a handful of other former targets scattered toward the back, a silent show of support. The assembly began with its usual rhythm, a round of applause for last year's achievements, a slideshow of campus highlights, and a few minutes of microphone jokes from the student body president. As the dean called for student community concerns, the auditorium buzzed. Emily's hand rose. To her own surprise, almost before she could second-guess herself, the room turned its collective gaze. Emily stepped forward, clutching her phone in one hand, the other wrapped around the evidence folder in her bag. The mic seemed to pull her voice out of hiding, thin at first, but steadier with every word. "I'd like to share something that's been happening at Monroe Hall," she began, scanning the sea of faces, seeing Jessica's mask harden and Chloe's jaw clench. This isn't easy, but it matters. For the next few minutes, Emily recounted the story. The friendly beginnings, the subtle shift as group dynamics turned, the escalation into bullying, both online and off. She detailed the fake social media account and its impact, the staged, locked room incident, and the months of engineered isolation. Calm and measured, she described how rumors became weapons, how she'd watched herself turn from friend to pariah. As she spoke, Emily projected screenshots onto the auditorium's screen. Meme posts, group chat snippets, voice recordings saved and anonymized where needed, and time-stamped records that knit the pattern together. Each new piece was presented without sensationalizing. Her case was a timeline, not a tantrum. She included evidence from Mia and two others as patterns of repeated behavior, names protected as allies chose. It was clear, methodical, and devastating. A hush swept the auditorium. For the first time, the chaos felt contained. Real events, real proof, impossible to twist. Emily closed her statement with a simple but piercing question. How many more have to feel alone before we believe them? When does protecting reputation stop being more important than protecting each other? There was a long silence, broken only by the faint squeak of someone shifting in a chair. The administration, dean, counselors, RAs, all exchanged uneasy glances. The student body president, usually so quick to quip, looked uncharacteristically sober. Jessica broke first. She stood and tried to laugh it off, calling Emily's story a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Chloe, to everyone's surprise, offered nothing at all, her jaw locked tight, her eyes glued to her shoes. Anna shrank into her seat, while Rachel looked close to tears. The crowd, sensing the shift, seemed unsure where to land. Some familiar with Jessica's charm, others suddenly aware of a darkness that had been festering just out of view. As murmurs swept the auditorium, the dean spoke up. She called for calm, acknowledged the gravity of the accusations, and, most importantly, promised a full investigation, immediate protection for anyone coming forward, and a guarantee that no one's reputation, however shiny, is more important than the solid truth. There were questions about privacy, about how many students had been hurt, about what would change. Others started to stand. Mia spoke briefly about her transfer after similar treatment. A freshman, voice shaking, admitted being shut out of Monroe Hall's social circles within weeks. An older male student described letting things slide when Jessica's group tormented someone else during his days in Monroe, his regret plain in his tone. Witnessing the ripple effect, Emily felt her own hands start to tremble, not with fear, but relief. For the first time since her small-town days in Vermont, she had made herself fully, painfully known to everyone around her. All the humiliation, all the disbelief, all the nights spent doubting her own sanity, they'd finally given way to a shared reckoning. Jessica's image crumbled, bit by bit. Her protests, that she just wanted to help everyone get along, that group chats were always a joke, sounded hollow in the hush. Chloe finally spoke, voice raw and unsteady, admitting that she wished she'd pushed back against what the group was doing. It just seemed easier to follow along. Anna sobbed quietly. Rachel apologized, first to Emily, then, haltingly, to everyone affected. The faculty assured Emily of their support and called for immediate campus forums about microaggressions, bullying, and the burden of silence. Several students filed statements with the administration. Jessica and her clique, suddenly exposed, found themselves isolated. Allies now turned away, unwilling to be pulled down with them. You could feel the entire power structure of Monroe Hall shifting, tectonic and final. By the time the assembly ended, Emily sat with Mia and a few new faces. Those who, even if they weren't friends yet, no longer saw her as invisible. For years, she would remember walking out into the autumn sun, her lungs finally filling with fresh air, the first real breath after months of suffocation.
Is everything all right with
Campus
you?
chatter exploded.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Text threads buzzed with screenshots of Emily's receipts, stories of her
Is
bravery,
everything all right at
and
work?
apologies from peers too afraid or oblivious
I'm
to
fine.
act before. Not all reactions were kind. Jessica's closest loyalists tried to minimize or distort the facts, but this time, the noise was
Hi,
different.
Is everything okay?
The truth
Yes.
wasn't hers alone anymore. That night, for the first time in months, Emily ate dinner surrounded by people, not judgment. She filled her notebook with details, not as evidence, but as closure. She wrote, "Some stories only heal once told. The rest can wait." She slept well, knowing there was work ahead, but the worst was finally behind her.
Jessica.
The downfall of the popular clique. The fallout after the assembly was immediate and overwhelming, not just for Emily, but for Monroe Hall's unchallenged elite as well. Jessica's group, once the gravitational center of freshman social life, found themselves at the epicenter of its different kind of attention, whispered speculation, public scrutiny, and official investigation. Campus administration responded quickly. Within 48 hours, Jessica, Chloe, Anna, and Rachel were all summoned for disciplinary hearings. Monroe Hall buzzed with uncertainty as rumors swirled. Some students hoped it would all blow over, while others waited for the long overdue reckoning. The university's new zero-tolerance policy for harassment and bullying, long criticized as a toothless gesture, was suddenly and very publicly put to the test. The group's dynamic changed before anyone received their official verdicts. Jessica's veneer of confidence cracked almost instantly once she realized she'd lost control of the narrative. Gone was the girl who could silence a room with a smirk or sweep away rumors with a cutting laugh. Now, she walked the halls with shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact. Her phone clutched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Where people once vied for her approval, they now avoided eye contact, unwilling to risk guilt by association. Chloe, usually Jessica's trusted lieutenant, was the first to openly break away. The night after the assembly, she was seen packing her things in the communal kitchen, eyes rimmed red, but jaw set with a new determination. For years, she'd been Jessica's echo, her defender when the group's jokes went too far, her silent shadow when guilt made her stomach clench. Now, she distanced herself, sending brief, honest apologies to Emily and to several others who had been hurt by their exclusion or ridicule. The campus grapevine soon carried word that she'd requested a new room assignment and was counseling with the university's mental health center. Some students criticized her for not speaking up sooner, but most seemed to recognize the courage it took to extract herself and admit her complicity. Anna, the artsy and sensitive friend, who had always seemed caught somewhere between friendship and fear, withdrew into herself entirely. She stopped coming to classes and left campus for several days, her parents arriving one afternoon to take her home. In a letter that was passed quietly to Emily via a mutual friend, Anna wrote, "I'm sorry I lost my voice when you needed me. I wish I'd had the guts to help you sooner." Anna's note was clumsy but sincere, an olive branch, however late, that Emily found herself rereading in moments of doubt. Rachel's guilt was the most visible. She'd been the loudest voice in the group's laughter, the first to defend Jessica during the height of the drama. But something had shifted in her during the assembly. Now she seemed haunted by her own betrayals, breaking down in tears during her hearing and later seeking Emily out to apologize in person. She struggled to articulate her regret, but her remorse was genuine.
Yes.
Her voice shaking as she admitted, "It got out of control. I didn't want to be the one left out, so I turned into the kind of friend I used to be afraid of. I'm really sorry, Emily, for everything." The conversation was short, awkward, but transformative for both of them. Emily left feeling a weight shift inside her, anger giving way to the start of forgiveness. But it was Jessica who took the brunt of the public downfall. The administration suspended her pending investigation. She was stripped of her leadership roles in campus organizations and barred from student events. Her perfect public image, carefully crafted over months, crumbled spectacularly in the face of mounting evidence. Friends distanced themselves, some in public statements, others through ghosted text messages, and sudden schedule changes. Word of the clique's collapse spread quickly. Even students who'd barely known Jessica by name now whispered stories about her, adding their own interpretations and half-truths. The freshman class, once so eager to impress the upperclassmen's favorites, began to ask harder questions about group loyalty and the cost of conformity. Rarely had the consequences of bullying been so public. so total. One RA remarked that it would take years for Monroe Hall's social life to feel normal again. For Emily, watching the group unravel brought only partial relief. She experienced a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. Part of her was tempted to gloat, but even as Jessica's misdeeds came to light, Emily saw their humanity. The fear behind Jessica's bravado, the uncertainty in Chloe's stares, the shame etched in Anna and Rachel's faces. The pain was real and lasting for everyone involved. The administration, eager to set a new precedent, issued official statements across campus. Posters appeared in dining halls and residents' common areas, advertising new peer support programs, anonymous reporting hotlines, and empathy training workshops. The university newsletter published features on the dangers of social capital and toxic leadership, quoting Emily and other victims anonymously. Dorm staff received updated training on recognizing and interrupting harassment, no longer just bystanders, but active protectors of the community. The fallout also changed the daily rhythms of Monroe Hall. Students who had sidelined themselves during Jessica's reign felt emboldened to step forward. Movie nights and study sessions slowly became more inclusive. A handful of classmates thanked Emily in hushed voices for saying what needed to be said. Although not everyone forgave or forgot, the days of worshiping Queen Bee dynamics appeared to be over. Yet the process of reckoning was messy. Not everyone wanted to face their own role in enabling the clique. Some pushed back, calling the whole scandal overblown, or even blaming Emily for snitching and not just letting things die down. Social networks realigned, and, as always, some new leaders began to emerge from the vacuum. But no one could command the same level of unquestioned loyalty, at least for now. The climate of Monroe Hall, still tender and bruised, shifted toward something raw, but also, possibly, more honest. As the weeks went by, Emily found herself strangely sought after, not as a celebrity, but as someone others looked to for reassurance that their own vulnerabilities were valid. She recognized new friends among those who had once been bystanders. The small, loyal circle she rebuilt was different, quieter, deeper, more forgiving. With the clique's power gone, each member of the campus community was forced to reevaluate not just whom they followed, but who they wanted to be. For her part, Jessica disappeared from campus life almost entirely. Some said she withdrew to her family's home. Others speculated she might not return to Monroe Hall at all. Chloe emerged slowly, attending support groups and sometimes sitting next to Emily in the cafeteria, offering shy nods. Rachel and Anna got involved in service projects, part penance, part attempt at personal growth. In the end, the clique's downfall was not just a moment of justice, however overdue, but a reminder that true change rarely comes without pain. The collapse of their cruel, shining edifice left cracks that would take months, if not years, to heal. But from those broken places, the first fragile signs of a more compassionate community began to grow. Rebirth and forgiveness. The days following the downfall of the clique were unlike anything Emily had ever lived through. At first, it felt as if Monroe Hall itself exhaled after holding its breath for months. The halls were quieter, but no longer constricted with dread. For a while, Emily felt like she was living in a world with all the colors turned down. She navigated campus carefully, uncertain of her footing and the reaction of those around her. But beneath that wariness was something new, a current of relief a cautious hope. The social iceberg that had once threatened to sink her was broken. In many places, the thaw was visible. Casual conversations cropping up in the lounge, notes of encouragement left on doors, and study groups welcoming unfamiliar faces. It wasn't a perfect world, but it was no longer hostile. For Emily, this felt miraculous and terrifying. A clean slate she feared she might not deserve. Despite the official vindication, healing was not immediate. Emily woke most mornings with her stomach in knots, half expecting another disaster. But as days turned into weeks, small acts of kindness and normalcy peppered her life. Her roommate, a shy sophomore named Trish, decorated their door with hand-drawn flowers and a sign that read, "Welcome, Emily." Anna, Rachel, and even Chloe, in their different ways, attempted to bridge the distance, each weighed down by their own regrets and shame. Rachel's apology stood out for its sincerity. One rainy afternoon, as Emily returned from class, she found Rachel waiting outside her room, arms wrapped tightly around her notebook. "Do you have a minute?" Rachel asked, her voice trembling. In the quiet of the study lounge, Rachel confessed the guilt that had kept her up at night, the way she'd gone along with the crowd, the sick feeling she'd get whenever Emily was left out. "I'm not asking for you to pretend it never happened," Rachel said. "I just want you to know I'm trying to be better. You didn't deserve any of it." Emily's guard was still high, but she saw the apology for what it was, a real attempt at repair. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but there was warmth in her chest she hadn't felt for a long time. "I appreciate you saying that, Rachel. I really do. It'll take time, but hearing it helps." A letter from Anna arrived next, a shaky, handwritten note admitting that Anna's silence had been cowardice, born of fear and confusion. Chloe's effort took the form of a quiet presence, sitting beside Emily in the dining hall, the two not speaking much, but learning to coexist without the wall of rivalry. Only Jessica kept her distance, her absence from campus life less an act of punishment than a shadow lingering at the edges. Monroe Hall itself felt changed. Events that would have once been exclusive for a select inner circle became open to all. Emily found herself invited to study sessions, a movie night where she was asked, genuinely, for her opinion on what to watch, and even a Sunday morning coffee run with 3 girls from her statistics class. With each invitation, she had to choose to let go of old anxieties, to trust that new connections could be free of hidden traps. The restoration of her self-esteem came gradually, and not without setbacks. Sometimes, Emily caught herself flinching if someone laughed too loudly or whispered as she walked by, her mind supplying old explanations. Despite the opportunity for vengeance, Emily surprised herself by declining it. She refused to speak ill of Jessica, Chloe, or the others when prompted by rumors or thirsty gossips. She refrained from posting about her ordeal, except to share a short, simple note about kindness on her Instagram. That post, she noticed, was liked by dozens of classmates, including some she hardly knew. More importantly, she meant it. Counseling helped, too. Sitting in a low-lit office with the campus therapist, Emily talked through the spiral that led her to despair. They discussed boundaries, rebuilding trust, the strange survivor's guilt she felt about moving on while others still struggled. "Forgiveness, Emily, doesn't mean you have to be friends again," her counselor reminded her. "Sometimes it just means letting yourself be at peace." And so she forgave, Not for the clique's sake, but for her own. She forgave Anna's silence, Rachel's cruel jokes, Chloe's blind loyalty, and even Jessica's calculated malice. Most of all, she forgave herself for believing their lies and for thinking she was weak. In her journal, she wrote, "They tried to make me shut down. Instead, I rebuilt. That's strength, not shame." Emily never reclaimed exactly what she'd lost, but she gained something sturdier, an unshakable sense of self-worth, built on surviving the fire and coming through changed. She became more empathetic to others, quick to spot isolation, the awkward outsider at an event, and extend a gentle invitation. Occasionally, younger students approached her for advice or comfort. Emily listened, never offering pat solutions, only patient understanding. By late fall, Emily's social world was smaller, but much richer. Movie nights with Trish and Mia, lively debates in her philosophy class, long meandering walks through the frosty quad with her new group. The friendships weren't built on popularity or social calculation, but on respect, laughter, and shared honesty. The story of what happened at Monroe Hall faded from daily campus chatter. Fresh scandals arose. Upperclassmen gossiped about next year's RA picks and end-of-semester parties. Yet, for those involved, the lessons endured. On the last evening before winter break, a quiet snow fell outside, and Emily and her friends gathered for hot cocoa and board games in the lounge. They laughed easily, memories of old pain softened by new happiness. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, too much had changed, but it was real and it was enough. Before heading to bed, Emily lingered by the frosted lounge windows, watching snowflakes spiral quietly. She thought of forgiveness not as a single moment, but as a steady, patient choosing to let go. She pressed her hand against the chilly glass, feeling the thrum of life and hope just beneath her skin. Something in her had indeed been reborn, an open ending, shadows of the mind. Emily never imagined her sophomore year would leave her with so many unanswered questions, not about others, but about herself. The drama at Monroe Hall had faded into campus history, referenced only in passing now and then. But the echoes lingered in quiet moments, in the wary glance of a new freshman at orientation, in the soft hesitation before someone joined a group study session, in the way laughter sometimes still fell silent when a certain topic arose. It might have been easy to pretend nothing had happened, to let the flow of university life obscure the past. People heal in different ways. Some forget, some rebuild, some pick up and leave. Emily tried instead to understand. The sharpest memories often returned, not in pain, but as questions. Why had she wanted so badly to be accepted? Why had Jessica once wielded her charm like a shield? Why had Chloe stood silent and Anna retreated into guilt? Even Rachel, who had laughed the loudest, privately battled her own sense of unworthiness. Slowly, these questions outnumbered the old wounds. Emily found herself searching for answers, not just in her own story, but in the lives unfolding all around her. That spring, she joined the campus peer support team, an initiative revived in the wake of Monroe Hall's scandal. Training sessions focused on active listening, spotting the subtle markers of distress, and understanding mental health as a spectrum, not a binary. Emily met students from every corner of the university. Art majors with anxious hands, science prodigies overwhelmed by perfectionism, athletes terrified of disappointing their families. Each new story confidential and fragile, offered her a sharper angle on the shadows people carried. She began volunteering at drop-in hours, sometimes passing long evenings waiting for someone to knock. Some weeks, the room was empty. Other times, she listened to stories that reminded her of her own, or were so radically different that she left shaken, reconsidering old assumptions. There was the exchange student lost in a tide of homesickness, the straight A pre-med who confessed panic attacks, the first year whose loneliness spilled out in a torrent of tears. Over and over, Emily repeated the same gentle phrase she'd once needed herself. You aren't as alone as you feel. Yet, for all her patience with others, Emily knew her own shadows demanded attention. In quiet moments, beneath the soft glow of her dorm lamp, or during meditative walks across the spring green quad, she confronted the debris the year had left behind. There were scars, of course, and a wariness that sometimes stiffened her shoulders in ways she couldn't control. She found herself scanning rooms for exits, rehearsing explanations for things that might never go wrong. Nights brought dreams that twisted the past into strange shapes, faces from her old friend group, warped by guilt or accusation, rooms that locked themselves from the inside. She kept a journal, not just for recounting events, but for tracking the subtler tides of feeling, the anxiety that shimmered during exams, the bursts of sudden happiness that arrived unbidden, the moments when old anger returned. Some entries ended in uncertainty. Sometimes she wrote simply, part of her wanted easy answers, but Emily realized that growth wasn't measured in dramatic victories. It unfolded in tiny, persistent acts, showing up, telling the truth, finding the courage to ask for help or to offer it without judgment. The more she learned, the less certain she became that anyone, Jessica, Chloe, Anna, even herself, fit neatly into categories of villain and victim. Early in the semester, Emily found herself sitting on the campus green with Trish and Mia. They lounged on a picnic blanket, textbooks spread out, but mostly forgotten, as conversation drifted from classes to memories of last fall. When the subject of Monroe Hall finally arose, the air turned serious, but not heavy. Did you ever think things would get better? Trish asked, brushing a curl behind her ear. Emily smiled faintly. Honestly, no. There were days I thought it would always feel that awful. But now, she caught Mia's eye, searching for the right words. I guess part of me thinks everyone has a part of themselves that's hidden. Some people's shadows just get pushed out into the open sooner than others. I'm still afraid sometimes, Mia admitted, of winding up on the outside again, or of becoming the one who hurts someone else without meaning to. Me too, Emily said, surprised by her own honesty. But I think maybe the point isn't to get rid of that fear. Maybe it's just to stay aware of it, to remember other people are just as complicated inside as we are. Those admissions became a kind of grounding ritual, not a conclusion, but a shared promise to remain attentive and kind. Emily had come to see friendship as something mutable and fragile, subject to change, to rupture, but always, possibly, to healing. She no longer believed in perfectly happy endings, only in the steady, imperfect work of moving forward. By late spring, as blossoms dusted the campus in pale pink, Emily started a small initiative with the peer support team. Together, they posted anonymous confessions, carefully screened and with permission, on bulletin boards around the dorms. Some days, I wake up wishing I could disappear. But I'm still here. I lied about being okay. because I didn't want to be a burden. I wish I'd said something when I saw someone else being left out. I'm working on forgiving myself, one day at a time. The notes drew attention from all corners. A few were mocked at first, but most sparked honest conversations. Hallways grew warmer. People discussed their own struggles with a candor Emily had never seen before the storm at Monroe Hall. Even faculty members began holding open office hours for anyone feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to be fine. Emily sometimes caught herself wondering how things might have been different. What if Jessica had gotten her own support earlier? What if someone had checked on Anna before her guilt turned to silence? Or if Chloe had stopped to question the crowd sooner? But in the end, she realized there was only what came next. She maintained a careful boundary, forgiving, but not forgetting. She didn't allow toxic friends to return uncritically to her inner circle. She kept her own needs, her limits, her truth at the core of every new relationship. Sometimes she faltered, as everyone does, but she had learned to begin again. One warm morning at semester's end, Emily hosted a small gathering in the newly redecorated Monroe Lounge. The group was an eclectic mix: old friends, new ones, a few recent arrivals from the peer support program. They ate brownies and played board games, laughter easy and unforced. For once, Emily didn't analyze every glance. She felt content simply to belong. Just another student with her own hidden stories. Before they left, Emily offered one final thought, voice quiet but certain. If there's one thing we all share, it's that none of us get through life without shadows. But if we're gentle with each other and with ourselves, maybe those shadows aren't something to fear. Maybe they're just part of what makes us real. As dusk gathered and the campus lights flickered on, Emily realized her journey was unfinished. There would always be new fears, new misunderstandings, and fresh hurt. But for the first time, she understood. The most important part of healing was not erasing the past, but holding its lessons close while stepping bravely into whatever came next. The story's ending, she decided, was not an ending at all, just another page, waiting patiently to be written.